What is going on, everyone? I hope you are all having a fantastic day. So as you may know, we've all been patiently waiting for the big stimulus round 2 proposal from the House of Representatives. We've seen the countless small proposals from lesser known members of Congress, but just hours ago we received the massive 1,800-page bill that in my opinion has a very high likelihood of actually passing. This proposal has already been pre-negotiated with the Senate, and the House is actually expected to vote on it as early as Friday. So I want to give you a really quick update on what is going on and break down exactly what is in this proposal to see when you can get your next stimulus check, because this is very, very good news in my opinion that's really going to help a lot of people. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so we've seen all of those other bills, but as we know, they have a very, very small chance of actually getting passed by the Senate because they're just too expensive. But this bill has been pre-negotiated with all of the provisions from both sides of the aisle and currently sits at 1,800 pages and comes in at just over $3 trillion. Now, obviously, that $3 trillion number includes funding for state and local governments, as well as small businesses and large corporations. But it has another large section that is for direct payments to individuals just like you. And like I said, this is extremely likely to actually happen because it is both realistic and has been pre-negotiated with both sides of the aisle in both houses of Congress. So under this bill, which is being called the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act, or HEROS Act, you would get another $1,200 stimulus check just like the last one that you received from the CARES Act. However, there are some very important changes, especially for dependents who kind of got left in the dust on the last stimulus bill. Remember that under the previous CARES Act, you would receive an additional $500 for every dependent you claimed under the age of 17, but this meant that college students and adult dependents were kind of left with no stimulus at all. But under this bill, not only would these older dependents receive their $1,200 now, but this bill is also retroactive and would give you the $1,200 that you should have received with the last stimulus bill. This is fantastic news, and not only includes those dependents on this bill, but also makes up for the wrongdoing from the last stimulus check. So if you're a college student or adult dependent who was mad about the last bill, then this bill really makes up for that, and you likely would be receiving $2,400. In addition, all other dependents, even if you're under the age of 17, would now give you an additional $1,200 on your check. So instead of receiving $500 from the CARES Act, you would now receive $1,200 up to a maximum of 3 dependents. So if you're a couple who's filing jointly and you claim 3 dependents, then you would get $6,000 under this bill as long as you meet the income requirements that we'll talk about in a second. There's also entire sections in this bill for low-income renters, which extends the non-eviction rule for 12 months after this bill is signed. So if this was to get passed, then low-income renters in certain categories would not have to worry about missing their rent payments and being evicted because of that. And remember that the effective date for all of this would not be when this bill is signed off, but when the original CARES Act was actually passed at the end of March. Alright, there are a few other important changes that really solve a lot of the issues from the last stimulus bill. So you may remember that anyone married to someone with an ITIN number received no stimulus at all, but this bill fixes that and now allows you to qualify for your $1,200 payment even if you are married to someone with the ITIN number. Unfortunately, your spouse would still not qualify, but this is a step in the right direction, and it is possible that this provision would also be retroactive, meaning you might receive that first round of $1,200 just like the dependents that we just talked about. On top of that, if your last stimulus check was taken for child support or any other form of debt that was owed, this bill bars banks from cooperating with debt collectors, meaning that your stimulus check is safe and cannot be taken from you as a form of repayment for debts that you owe. Now, the income thresholds for this bill are essentially the same as the original CARES Act, so couples making $150,000 a year or less would qualify, head of household filers making $112,500 a year or less would qualify, and individuals making $75,000 a year or less would also qualify. These amounts would phase out similar to the last bill at a rate of 5%, so even if you're above those income thresholds, you're not completely out of luck and would simply receive a smaller payment. So you might be a little bummed that this does not have the recurring monthly payments that we've seen from so many of the other proposals, but remember that this bill was pre-negotiated with the House, the Senate, and members on both sides of the aisle, and that's really, really important and therefore has an extremely high likelihood of actually getting passed. Instead of just having another lofty idea that will never actually happen, this is a real concrete approach that appeals to both sides of the aisle and likely will actually get passed, in my opinion. Now, the House does need 72 hours notice before voting on a bill, but this does mean that they could vote as early as Friday or at the very latest early next week. From there, it would move on to the Senate, but again, this bill was pre-negotiated, so the Senate really shouldn't have too many alterations to make, and then it's really off to the president, and once he signs off on it, we could see these payments as early as June. And that's fantastic news for everyone, but especially people who are going through serious financial hardship right now. So I just gave you the big points that I caught when glancing through this massive bill, but if you want to read the full thing, I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. I hope this brought some good news to you because I'm definitely excited about this and really think it's going to help a lot of people, and it's so refreshing to see a bipartisan proposal that has been pre-negotiated that actually has a high chance of passing. Some of those other ideas that we've talked about sound great, but who cares if they're never actually going to happen? So be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you think of this new proposal, and if you think it is too much, not enough, or the perfect compromise that the American people need right now. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on exactly what is going on and when we can actually see this bill get passed. Be sure to hit the like button if you did enjoy today's video, and use the first link down in the description to Webull to get 2 free stocks, one of which is worth up to $1,400 when you deposit $100 or more. Thank you so much for your time, take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.